They say embrace the change, enjoy the chaos, and stand united. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining me on another episode of They Say It Takes a Village. Today's episode is slightly different in the fact that I've got not one, but two of Lighthouse Arabia's clinical psychologists, Dr. Summer Fakhro and Juan. We're here to talk about the inevitable evolution of relationships after parenthood. I know a lot of you have requested this, and this is the first part of the series. So I'm going to hand over the mic to these wonderful people. Dr. Summer, Juan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us, Raya.
I feel like this was a long time coming with all the back and forth and summer, and it's just, yeah.
The logistics, I think, sometimes take a while, but I think the longer you wait, the better it turns out.
Yes, that's exactly.
Let it simmer like a good stew.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you guys are here.
Thanks.
Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourselves? How long have you been in the UAE and what you focus on in your practice?
I've been in the UAE now for 3.5 years. The main focus of my clinical work is on individual therapy and then couples work. Within couples work, it ranges from just enhancing relationships to really assisting couples through tumultuous times and reconnecting and repairing after deep hurt and disappointment in relationships. Yeah. And then from time to time, I work with families as well.
Brilliant. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Dr. Summer?
So I've been in the UAE for 2.5 years.
Oh, I don't know. I was under the impression that you were here for a long time.
Yeah, I guess because I'm from the GCC. So I grew up here. So in a way, it felt like coming home. It was its own, there's been that whole journey internally for myself as well. Professionally, I have been on my own evolution as well. I worked predominantly with children when I first joined, when I first moved here. And with time, and I think with the journey of becoming a parent myself, I started to work more with parents around supporting them, supporting their mental health on the journey, because we know inevitably parents' wellness equals child's wellness, and it's just so central to child's mental health.
No, absolutely. And, you know, of course, this episode, we're basically focusing on couples. And that impacts, obviously, the family unit. Mm-hmm. So I feel like this was perfectly fitting to kind of group you guys together. This was a wonderful idea. Yeah. Do you tend to work hand in hand when you have, when you've got clients, or?
From time to time.
Yeah.
With Summer, to a large extent, working with children as well as doing parenting work. Yeah. And myself working more with couples work. It happens from time to time that we share a family unit where I see part of the unit and she works with part of the unit, which is lovely to be in one clinic where we have that synergy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think my first question would have to be, I think whenever you think about relationships and, starting a family, there's this whole idea of, I think when it comes to parenting, the whole idea of you're not alone should be like common theme. Mm-hmm. So my first question would have to be, what from both of your sort of experiences and from your clients, what have you seen come up as probably the biggest challenges that parents have or couples have once they become parents? Yeah. Do you see?
Well, I guess for me, the first thing to say, because as you said, it's important to know that you're not alone. The first thing to say is, I don't know a couple that doesn't struggle in my personal life and in my professional life with the shift. I mean, the shift is so vast. Internally, I think for each individual, there's such a shift in identity, such a shift in expectations of yourself, the needs you suddenly have to meet of someone else. But then in the couple functioning as well, like what are the expectations as a couple? Like what was your functioning previously as looking after each other, maybe, enjoying time together, and then the function of that really changing and shifting. So I think it's so natural as humans to be threatened by change, to feel uncomfortable with it, to feel uneasy with this big shift in individual identity changes. And so I think that in and of itself creates some anxiety and tension within a couple.
Absolutely. I can put that for myself in the nutshell of a changing connection. Mm. And within the experience of the connection, there's different facets. but there's a definite shift in how people experience the level of connection, the depth of connection, the type of connection. It's just different.
Yeah. And I think that's something that should be highlighted constantly. You know, I love when you say there's not a single couple that you know that hasn't had challenges. It's hard. You know, I find there's a point in parenting or parenthood, I guess, when you do tend to feel a bit isolated and you think whatever you're going through, you're doing it on your own, that you're the only one experiencing these types of changes and shifts and feelings towards maybe your partner or your children or whoever it might be. And just to know the fact that it's not everybody, you know, everybody does it and everybody goes through this and there is challenges. And it's just, I think it's also to know that there are people such as yourselves there to help that. You know, I think that's probably the most important.
I think so. And I think one of the greatest barriers to realizing that there is people going through the same thing is shame. I think shame is really common. So something people often feel when they realize, oh, my life isn't going how I expected. It seems like other people are getting on and I'm not. And that can create a lot of shame and fear internally. And I think that really prevents people from speaking out and saying, motherhood is really hard or fatherhood is, I think I'm doing everything wrong. And that's, I think there's so much fear in doing that, which is why we all end up feeling quite disconnected.
Because essentially, I mean, we all, I mean, especially in my sort of generation, not that I'm old by any means, but, you know, when we were growing up, you know, that's what happily ever after looked like. You meet your partner and you get married and you complete your family and have children. And that is almost, I feel, maybe not so much now, but that was the aim of the game. That was the recipe to happiness. Which, I mean, not that it isn't wonderful. It is. But there's no shame in also expressing the fact that there's a lot of not so wonderful parts to it. And it's that kind of duality between the shift in your relationship and the shift in who you are as a human being that you find a bit confronting. I feel there's a lot of change on all fronts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And some of the changes I've realized, or is my take on it, is it's one of the very few mirrors that will facilitate that awareness is becoming a parent. If I just, something in me changed overnight. And through all the experiences of my life, nothing facilitated that. It was almost like this lion awoke in me, a protective, angry side. When I held our firstborn, that first experience of, okay, now I'm a dad, it activated something in me that wasn't there before or I wasn't aware of, but nothing triggered it like that experience. So I think that's also what makes it so difficult and so transitional, is that it brings to the surface so many dormant and dismembered parts of us. Because the whole situation requires it.
That's so true. That's so true. There is a lot of feelings that you didn't think that you had. And there's a lot of things that you just think, where did that even come from?
Is that me?
But that's why parents, I mean, I don't want to say just mothers, dads do it too. There is a struggle in identity.
Totally.
So it's not easy. It's definitely, no, it's definitely easy. How, I mean, you've got, let's say, a couple that comes to you or a family that would come to you. How would you guide them to overcoming things like, you know, this drastic change overnight and getting used to that? I mean, I'm sure you guys have, clinically have a 1,001 things that you would do, but what would you say would be the most fundamental tool that you can give a couple when they are sort of experiencing, or they come to see you?
One of the very first things is, let's agree not to doubt each other's intentions. Because if I doubt your intention towards me and towards us, why bother? So with that on the table, the next thing is, we are in this together. So let's start using we language. It's not I do this and you do that and we. Your intentions for me are good and we're in this together. So that sets the stage for a unit from the move from a me awareness to a we awareness, in which I then feel held, supported, regulated, because this whole setting, this whole change that is happening is putting all of us in a dysregulated state.
Absolutely.
We're sleep deprived, we're disoriented, our deepest fears, anxieties, all of those things are coming to the surface. And if I enter that with the awareness, it's me against this, I'm going to be reactive.
That's so true. Yeah.
So that's one of the very first things that I will do is, let's agree, our intentions are good, and we're in this together.
Something I do as well, kind of linked to that, is about practicing listening. Because I think, as you said, when we're dysregulated, we have all of our own stuff, we're not sleeping, it's really hard to hear what someone is saying truly without our defenses coming up and without our own interpretations taking over the conversation. So something I find is that each person feels so strongly that they're right or their understanding of the situation is right. But in reality, there is no right. It's just that we're not truly hearing the other person's experience and we're taking what they say oftentimes personally. It becomes very personal.
And you take it personal.
Yeah. And then it just derails the whole conversation from the beginning.
It becomes, there's a lot of what I felt, again, I'm always going to go back to my own personal thing. I can't speak for everybody, but the way that I felt that there was always one person on a day may feel hard done by. So it's always me, but I'm the one. I did this. I got up. I fed it. That I felt, and usually it was me. So I remember specifically feeling quite sorry for myself and thinking, well, I did all of that. So, you know, the normal day-to-day conversation, which may have not offended me previously from not being sleep deprived and not feeling overwhelmed and not feeling so overstimulated, I would have not even picked up on that. Whereas I was dissecting every single word and thinking, no, but I did that. So this, how could you say that? You know, and it could be nothing. I was so sensitive to the fact that I felt a bit hard done by. So, and I'm pretty sure he felt the same thing because, I mean, we are a modern couple. We do things, you know, on a shared basis. But yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you start to look so intrinsic and there was no more listening, you know, when I had 2 or 3 hours sleep. No matter what my husband was saying to me, all I kept thinking, I'm so tired. I can't listen to this. I can hear the baby. Yeah, it's tough.
If you think of that on a very primal survival level, if we go back 100,000 years and you have an infant which is completely dependent on survival on you, you have to pick up on everything that's wrong. And you have to be able to react to everything that's wrong in order to keep that infant safe.
That's right.
Now you're sleep deprived. Your body, you function on less calories if you breastfeed, but just because you're sleep deprived and the time for cooking and preparing meals are also less, I think it's natural to want to protect from both. The mother will want to protect this infant from anything or anyone that jeopardizes the safety. So you are already functioning with your lid almost flipped by default. And then if he says something that triggers something in your own psychodynamic workings, you'll attack him.
Absolutely.
And the same from him. He's the protector 100,000 years back. He'll be outside with the rest of the men, being on the lookout, hunting. And if something is out of place, he'll have to fight. And he'll have to protect. I think we have to take into consideration our hardwire is to protect ourselves and those dependent on us. And unfortunately, in that setup, the biggest threat that we experience is emotional and psychological, and whomever deals the blow will be attacked.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's true. And I think this period, as you're saying, JV, we really are very primal.
Yeah.
We really, all the hormones that are running through our body. I mean, at the husband as well, the partner, the man in the relationship also has lots of physical changes that happen. And then that, when you and your baby are having that skin to skin moment, all the, the co-regulation, it's a very primal experience. There's so much shift happening in your brain.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really helpful to have that lens of just go back to animalistically what's going on.
Go back to the origin.
Yeah.
It does help. It definitely does help. Yeah. And, it's that, to understand that and talk about it. But then obviously communication. I mean, we're always told to communicate in every aspect of our lives because that is key, obviously, to understanding each other, your kids, your husband or your partner. But I find in early parenting, even sort of throughout, sometimes communication does fall. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that happens? Quite often after you become a parent.
Well, one of the reasons I think is because when we have a child, as you said, a lot of emotions come up that have been totally dormant and unconscious our whole lives. And unfortunately, what happens when we're unconscious is that we act out. We act things out without being able to be objective or considering both sides of the situation. And so I think naturally, if you say something to someone who's in that state, you might say, "Can you help with the dishes?" Their experience, unconscious wiring might sound to them like you're nagging or you're saying you don't do enough or why are you always on your phone when actually all you're saying is could you do the dishes? So I think what happens is there's a real breakdown because of the unconscious wiring that comes up, which I think we know that to a certain extent we're kind of reliving our childhood when we have a baby. We start reliving what we experienced as a child, but this again is all totally unconscious, and it takes a lot of effort for it to come into true awareness and be able to communicate clearly without those defenses up.
Something that I tell my clients usually is, I don't believe there's a problem in communication. Because screw you, it's effective communication.
It is to the point and direct.
To the point.
No one can misunderstand that.
There is a disconnection. Outside of held connection, communication are more likely to be interpreted as a threat. And that is why in times like that, it's more important to slow down, stop, become present, make eye contact, start breathing together so that my felt sense of you is you are here. I calm down because only then am I receptive to actually listen and not react.
Absolutely.
And it starts there by let's slow down. Everything is rushed. It's hectic. It's chaotic. Time is limited. There's a lot more logistical things to happen. So we want to address things like that.
Yeah.
You can't.
No.
No one can. No one can. We don't have the capacity. Unless I feel you are here with me and we both first settle and feel internally safe, then I can express myself as I.
Honestly, just out of curiosity, where does one do that? I'm thinking about my home. I've got a 5.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old and a lovely nanny and me and my husband. There's not a lot of space to go and hide and have that sort of calm down, sort of let's be present and then really listen to each other, because in actual fact, you are trying to get that message across super quick because you've got 1,000 other things that are still pending. So is it just a matter of couples carving that, being aware that, you don't want it to escalate to something that's going to bubble over. Just take a minute, no matter where that is, even if it's in the bathroom or in the garage or in the car or something like that. I mean, would that generally be the advice?
The best place to do it is in the bath.
Okay.
Because neither of you can run away.
Right.
You're confined by that space, sitting opposite each other, having to make eye contact, and you can't just up and go.
Yeah.
So already you are there, both need to clean up,
Yeah.
but you're present. You feel each other's physical presence, can make eye contact and just breathe. I think after the birth of a child or children, everything becomes scheduled and intentional. We need to move beyond
really important.
the idea of spontaneity and
Absolutely.
organic. It's a fantasy. Everything becomes scheduled. Scheduled conversation, scheduled sexual intimacy, scheduled, and that doesn't make it mechanical, makes it intentional.
Yeah.
I honestly, I feel that that's not that concept is not a very romantic thing, is it? And therefore, lots of people don't chat about it.
Yes.
Don't talk about it. No one likes to be scheduled. Nobody, but, well, in about, sort of 45 minutes, let's have a conversation. In about 45 minutes, this is a way to, be intimate or whatever it might be. That's not a very romantic notion.
Yeah.
But that's the reality.
Because romance doesn't make relationships last.
No. But that's what is honestly slightly irritating, because you go into, with all good intention, it's always, this, you're in love and you get married or you have a baby, and you're under this impression that things naturally will fall into place.
Yeah.
And you think, of course, having a family and starting a family, it is a representation of love, obviously,
Yeah.
because you love each other and you created
Yeah.
this beautiful life. But it's work, it's intentional work. And it's just like anything else that you want to succeed at. We can't coast through our careers if we want to make any type of impact, nor can we do that with our children.
Yeah.
Surely that's not going to be the same for marriage or any partnership.
Yeah.
It's a skill,
Yeah.
like anything. You have to put in your 10,000 hours,
Absolutely.
not of just being married for 10,000 hours, intentionally interacting for 10,000 hours, to get skilled at relationship,
Yeah.
to get skilled at intimacy, to get skilled at communication. I think it's normal, and we all have this deep-seated yearning that someone knows me so well that they know what I want and they know how to give it. But that's an infantile expectation. No adult knows what I want. Now it's up to me to express it. And I keep telling my clients, if not expressed, you cannot expect.
Very true.
Yeah.
It's so, so true. I think we kind of touched on that. So obviously to sort of address communication or sort of issues and the breakdown of communication is to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
That's, again, it's one of those things that not talked about, not emphasized enough. And a lot of couples, I feel, are a bit worried when they think, oh, but we're so on a time frame and we're so on a schedule and that's not fun. But it's not that it's not fun, or it is fun. It's just what needs to be done.
Yeah. And I would see it as a form of love, such a central form of love. When you're so clear in your values, that tension dissolves naturally. When you're so clear on, this is what I'm dedicating my time to. It's my relationship. It's my time with my child. Of course, there's work there, but when you're clear on that, all of these tensions of being pulled in 100 directions really dissolve. And I think we start to recognize that is a central form of love, that we have dedicated our time and our energy to this person and the relationship.
Absolutely.
And it makes it predictable. Because you're in a situation that's unpredictable. You've never been a parent.
Yeah.
So you don't know what's going to happen within an hour's time.
No.
You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So if things are scheduled, like conversation with your partner, this thing is going to be addressed. My frustration will be aired. I will be heard. I will be listened to.
Absolutely.
So I'm yet to meet a person who in a hurry can effectively get a message across in such a way that the other one who's hurried really receive it and understand it. Something else that I want to add to that is we have this urgency that we have to solve everything. And and to resolve everything and to talk about everything, you don't. It's going to be a mess.
I'm smiling.
Get through the mess.
I'm smiling only because my husband is a resolver. Whatever we disagree on, it needs to be resolved. And I'm more in the camp of, you know what, let me sleep on it. I'd like a little minute.
Yeah.
I need to have a bit of time. It's funny that I do think, sometimes I pride him, with having that type of, sort of way of dealing with conflict. But also at the same time, we're two different people. And there are times where I feel like, okay, a resolution can be done. And there are times where I think, no, I need time.
Yeah. And I think knowing that about each other is so central, because I think it's so easy to feel like, for example, why does he want to solve this now? It's so overwhelming for me. Can't you see I'm overwhelmed? Versus for him to say, how can she sleep? And this is still an issue. Is she like a heartless?
So this is the constant. How can you sleep? It's gonna spill on to the next perfectly fine day. I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's good to know each other, that's just your way of operating, and that's the time you need, and that's how you resolve things, so that it's not personal. Again,
well, that's the thing. I feel like now we've come up with, like little buckets. Like we can resolve. Give me some time.
Yeah.
We sort of place things there. But honestly, it's on trial and error.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of times that it's just not worked is many. But I think as we are more and more sort of going through life together, I can see, okay, it's not really a big deal. Let me just, kind of get on with this argument. Or I really feel strongly about this. I'm not going to let it go until, I feel seen and heard kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to know what the other person how they deal with a certain situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not easy.
No, it's not easy. And I think you touch on it because so much of it is not about knowing the strategies. It's about the lived experience of it and learning through it and seeing what comes up for you and being curious and compassionate to yourself and to the other person too. Like that all happens through the experience and not through someone being able to tell you the strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel another potential point of conflict is parenting styles. I assume it's a big one.
Yes. To say the least, 90% of my work.
Yeah.
We just follow the textbook.
That's it. That's what you just, there's books about it, right?
There's books,
how common is that type of challenge between couples?
I mean, I want to say the same as I said before.
Yeah.
It is a fact that we'll parent differently. We are two different people. We've had different upbringings. We have different mindsets. We will parent differently. I think the capacity to manage it is partly about how much can I keep an open mind? How much can I consider what's coming up for me and be conscious of my own stuff? So rather than think about parenting style A, B, and C, I think about how conscious can I be as a parent? Because the consciousness, usually you can see that a parent who is truly conscious can be conscious of, I can see my partner's defenses are coming up. And that's why he or she is finding the situation challenging. And that's having an impact on my child in this way. And to me now, I'm feeling agitated because I think I could do this better. But it's the consciousness of the whole dynamic that can help us almost kind of not resolve it, because there will be differences always, but reduce the tension inside of us. I think it allows us to be a present, consistent parent if we can be truly conscious through it. I think what happens often is that we see a difference and it's really triggering because it's very different from how we parent. And maybe a book told us it's really wrong what they're doing. And then we switch off as well. And we start trying to force our approach. And that's where the tension happens.
It becomes almost like a huge clash of the titans. No,
Exactly.
it's me, no, yeah.
And it's a competition of who's more right. And this book said this, and can't you see that? And unfortunately, we all tend to, even myself, who I do a lot of my own personal exploration, and I know a lot of theories, I switch off when I'm parenting because very often we get triggered in ways that we've never known we could be triggered. So it's really important to recognize with compassion towards ourselves, like, where am I switching off and how can I hold a compassionate approach towards the situation?
If we are able, as you said, to have a more compassionate approach towards ourselves and our partners, I think that can facilitate collaboration as parents.
Yeah.
Because we two people.
Yeah.
And we want to offer two different experiences. And when we are more collaborative, we are more able to listen to, okay, what's the actual value that we are trying to instill here?
Yeah.
Because the way I parent is only a means to an end. What's the end here?
Yeah.
It's not about what I do, it's why do I do this?
What did you want to achieve?
What do I want to achieve? And through what you bring to the table, what you want to do with our child, what I want, through those two different approaches, we still reach that value. Something that's very important and central to how I work with couples is each one's view is valid, but partial.
Yeah.
Whatever my approach to parenting, it's valid and there's truth to it, but it's partial. I don't have the right way. I have a way. You don't have the wrong way. You have a way. How do we collaborate towards where we want or how we want to empower and prepare this child for the life that lies ahead?
Do you think you can tie in sort of that intentional hour that you have carved out to talk to your spouse or your partner to also discuss things, your views on how to parent a child?
Ideally, that should have happened before you had this.
But the thing is,
But if it didn't,
yeah.
it has to.
Yeah.
It has to happen intentionally. Otherwise, we're just going to go by default. Monkey see, monkey do. And I'm going to do what my parents did. Why? It's all I know.
Absolutely.
No matter how many books I've read. When it comes to the stressful situation, I'm going to go to what I know best, and that's what I experienced.
And it becomes it's a reflex. So it's the first emotion or the first reaction to a trigger or something like that.
So exactly the same with the relationship. I'm going to do what I know. And therefore, we schedule time to unpack this, for me to better understand you and to hear from you how I can meet your needs. And for you to understand me better so you know how to meet my needs. The same with parenting.
Yeah.
It has to be intentional.
Absolutely.
And conscious, as you said. Be conscious of it.
I think, something I like to remind parents is the fact that with parenting, we're so worried all the time about damaging our children.
Honestly, that's my biggest fear. Like, I'm going to put it out there. It's my biggest fear is to damage them or just raise not wonderful human beings.
Yeah.
But then again, it's one of those things that it's so in perspective, for what that means to me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think you don't want to damage them. For me, what that means is I don't want any of my baggage or negativity to be sort of passed down to them. I'd like to be conscious enough to kind of pick up on whatever it might be that I don't like about myself. Not to pass it down to them. And that's where I'm just petrified. So but it is a lot of pressure.
It is. The thing is that's a wish I have as well. But I also know that there's so much that I have no control over. My child is her own person. Yeah. She's on her own journey. And there's so much that I don't know I'm impacting her with. And I think so much of it is just being open to the experience. And again, I think about consciousness. It's not about right or wrong. It's just about knowing a little bit more, taking a curious stance, being interested in how the things I do might be impacting her or not, and how she's growing up to be her own self. And I always remind parents that it only takes one conscious parent. We don't have to worry so much about changing our partner. It's that conscious, the parent who is willing to be conscious and go through the pain of gaining that awareness. They are so able to be that sturdy, present space person for a child. And that's a gift to the child. So I think oftentimes I try and encourage parents, don't worry so much about what the other person is doing. If you can be there truly present, truly open to their emotions, that's a great gift. That's a huge gift.
I'm going to take you back a little bit.
Yes.
Would you define or give characteristics of a conscious parent?
Yes. So I guess the way I would describe a conscious parent is a parent who's able to be aware of what's going on for them internally to the point that it's not blinding them. So they are fully aware that what my child is doing right now, I'm finding very difficult. So let's say an unconscious parent might say, my child is trying to punish me for something. My child is trying to upset me. We interpret things through our lens of the world, our view of the world. Maybe my child is going to nursery and I feel anxiety. I feel like I'm being abandoned, which is a reality many parents face. We feel anxious. But actually, the more I can be conscious, this is my own stuff that's coming up, and to not project that onto my child as she's doing that to me, or I need to fix what's going on for her. Sometimes, for example, I might, if I'm experiencing anxiety, I might see my child and say, she's anxious, but that's a projection. It's my lens rather than truly connecting to how she's feeling. So that's what I mean by conscious.
Okay. A big one I'm going to throw out on you guys right now.
Bring it on.
Balance. The word that is just, it floats around like something over our heads, like this unattainable holy grail. That we have to be balanced in every aspect of our lives, whether it's our health, whether it's our parenting, our relationships, our work, our side hustles, whatever it might be. We somehow need to, sort of manifest this balance.
Yeah.
How much pressure do you think the idea of balance has put on couples and families?
Tremendous.
Do you believe in balance?
Yes, I do. But balance is not a generic term, and there's no generic template for it. What is balanced for one person is balanced for only that person.
Absolutely.
And for no one else. I think I shared with you earlier about one of my hobbies is to stack stones.
Yes.
And I do workshops with people where I let them then stack stones and look at it because it's balancing. But no two stacks look alike. And there's a time limit to that balance. It will fall sometime. So balance is what works optimally for me in this period of time, that I'm able to function in a way that I aim to, that I am energized, that I am fulfilled, I find meaning in it, I can fulfill my responsibilities for now. Might look different in a week, might look different in a year. And sometimes
it might be different day to day.
Might be different day to day. And sometimes an unbalanced life is balanced for you. If you go and look at the lives of all the great people, their lives are not balanced according to the norm. That is the balance that was needed to attain that thing. So I think the first thing we can do is to acknowledge that the adjustment, or when children enter a relational space, there's not going to be balance. It disrupts the balance. And that's what it's supposed to be. Because it's a new system, it has to readjust and find a new way. So it will go through a long period of mess until you find, oh, this is how the stones stack now. So again, it's not to have or to strike the perfect balance, to be the perfect parents. It's just to be good enough parents and to find a balance for now.
Yeah. I sometimes think of that as like, rather than saying I found balance, it's in a balancing act, the balancing act, which is that there's never true static balance,
Yes.
that now I've achieved this thing.
Yes.
And there's going to be periods of time, for example, over the summer holiday, this past summer holiday, we were traveling and I had no alone time with my husband. And we were very conscious of that. We were like, this is a period of time where we haven't been able to work on our relationship as much as usual. But now, after we've come back, we're just being very intentional about recreating that balance. And it's the same with children. There's going to be periods where you have to spend 70% of your energy on work, and it's going to be like 20% kids. And then you readjust that balance maybe on the weekend or whatever it is, but it's constantly shifting. And you're just, again, evaluating, but with an approach of compassion towards yourself, that I'm still figuring this out and it's natural to be shifting.
So that's, to be truly kind to yourself.
Yeah.
To appreciate that you are doing your best and you've got every intention to make things work as best as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. And I think that taking a step back and thinking, you know what, today is enough for me. Either we will try to do the balancing act tomorrow or, whatever it might be. I find balance, or the idea of having, we were talking before we started shooting, that to have your day planned out where you dedicate 10% on work, 10% on something else, 10% for the kids. Me personally, you end up getting quite frazzled. And a lovely friend of mine was saying, and gave me incredible advice, where just focus on what the task is for that day, for that time. Go in at your 95%, 100%, even if you can. And that would be, you finish, whatever it might be. Let's say it's the podcast. I go in, I've had a wonderful day with you guys. I go back feeling quite fulfilled. I'm happy that this was, a great success. And I'm, whatever the time that I do have, I am completely present with my children.
Yes.
Because I'm not also thinking, oh my God, I've got to send an email and I've got to do this, but I've put my phone away and, I got to give them dinner and bath time and bed. That's not all day with them, but it was what I could do for that day.
Yeah.
And maybe that is balance.
Yeah.
It's to just be where you are.
Be where I am.
Yeah.
It's just, I find when people are in a state of imbalance, it's quite dangerous. And it can sort of spill over to the next day, and then it's the next week, and it just becomes this quite a stressful situation.
Yeah. The way I see it is there's a lot of inner tension that can be created and that friction. And I think, we say that we throw the term mom guilt around quite a lot, because I think that tension is so intense around, I feel I should be doing something else. I feel I should be doing X, Y, and Z
honestly,
when I can't.
have that feeling every day.
Yeah. And
It doesn't go.
Yeah.
But it's a useless emotion. I don't know. Is it useful? Is it useless? I don't know. It's just sometimes I feel, yes, mom guilt is...
It's intense, but as you say, there's, in this current moment where we're talking and recording a podcast, is it useful for us to be thinking about that? No. Probably not. But and if you can be present truly with what you're doing.
But I did carve out this time, so I don't really have that much guilt being away from, but I was intentional about doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it comes down again to that. It's intentional living. It's intentional work in the relationship. It's intentional parenting. It's intentional self-care. It's intentional.
Yeah. I feel like you answered all of my questions. I mean, the next one, obviously, another big one that is sort of as big probably, if not bigger, is resentment.
Yeah.
Resentment, I feel, within my group of friends, extended, sort of colleagues, there's a lot of, I do hear it a lot more from moms and women, that they're quite resentful of their partner, but I think it's probably as equal between moms and dads.
Yeah.
Do you see resentment as quite a big challenge when a couple steps into parenthood? And why? Why is it this common?
I understand resentment as unmet needs.
Yeah.
I've stretched myself too far. I've given more than I could. I've overextended myself. So immediately when we get ourselves into that state, we feel resentful. And I always try, because this is something I do for myself all the time. I ask myself, who am I expecting to meet my needs?
Yeah.
I'm an adult now. And I think it's really important to ask myself, who am I expecting to come and save me and from this situation that I'm in? I'm the only person who can truly change what I'm feeling.
Yes.
I think it's so important to empower yourself in that situation, because resentment, like I said, we overstretch ourselves, and our immediate instinct unconsciously is to blame someone else for it. You worked too hard this week, or you didn't do this, or I'm the one who, and it immediately goes a projection, when in reality, I can choose how I spend my time. I can choose when I take breaks. And of course, having children is really hard. It's not meant to be easy. No one finds it easy. But I think being intentional about, even if I have 10 minutes, am I going to go on Instagram and scroll on my phone or turn on the TV? Or will I truly find something I enjoy to rest? Will I take a breather? Will I ask, if I have a nanny at home, will I truly ask her for help when I'm needing it? With my partner, can I express, as Juan said earlier, am I expressing exactly what I need? Am I communicating my needs very clearly? And if they aren't able to do that, will I ask someone else who can help? I think there's so much around taking our power back and being able to say, I can find a way to get these needs that are missing met. That's my perspective.
Totally, I agree with that. We resent because we expected a different outcome.
Absolutely.
And usually we end up experiencing resentment because somewhere along the line we abdicated our power, which means I denied the fact that I had a choice, or I abdicate my ownership of the choice that I made. We abdicate the responsibility for our own well-being and the tasks that we took the responsibility for, and we are not communicating our boundaries clearly.
Yeah.
And that leads to a diffuse relational space and experience of anticipating, expecting, hoping, wishing.
Yeah.
And the focus is then not, again, on conscious, aware choice, responsibility, and boundaries, where I explicitly express what I want from you. And where, as a couple, we sit and we identify what's the responsibilities here, who takes ownership for what.
Absolutely.
And I don't silently expect you to do something, because if you love me enough, you'll know.
Completely.
The thing is, you're saying it and we're laughing, but honestly, this is my life.
It's all of our lives.
It's all of us.
It's the amount.
This is us.
The amount, the words that you're saying, because I would turn around and say to my husband, yeah, but I mean, if you truly cared, and he's like, just tell me what it is that you want.
Yeah.
And it's, this type of conversation, it's just so funny when we're talking about it so logically.
Yeah.
Now.
Yet in that moment, all logic is out
It's
the door.
out the door.
Yeah.
Completely.
And it's because we're not logical beings.
No.
We're emotional beings.
Yes.
And we relate to people from a part in the brain that is not logical, that doesn't even understand language. It feels
true.
you, it senses you, it reads you, and then we just make sense of it.
Yeah.
But I relate to you emotionally. I make decisions emotionally. I behave emotionally.
Yeah.
And that is why it's that, again, that primal need that you just flow with me and I don't have to speak.
I do want to touch on the question about women in particular, because I do think that many women may be struggling with this because of hundreds of thousands of years of women being generally the carers in communities. Primary carers, putting other people's needs first, whether that's their parents or their children's or their friends. And oftentimes having a real hard time saying, I need something else. I need space. I need to switch off, or admitting I can't meet all of my child's needs. I think that's a truly conscious position, which is I actually can't make my child happy all the time. And I think there's so much fear around that. We go into pregnancy almost like martyrs. We're like, now you can't have sushi and you can't have
There's
red meat and
there's
you
a
can't
lot of
have
no,
cheese.
no.
And we're
Yeah.
we get kind of socialized to be martyrs. We give ourselves and we sacrifice. And then I think we're our own harshest critics, but when we say, you know what, I need something else, we shame ourselves, we criticize ourselves.
How can I possibly need anything else? Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that might be part of why women tend to experience resentments in relationships, especially around parenting.
Yeah. There's always a bigger narrative that we need to acknowledge. The cultural narrative, the religious narrative, a particular family's narrative, and then my own script that I'm running, which stems from all of that. And with compassion, where does this come from? And that is not necessarily true.
Absolutely.
But also then to be compassionate that changing and shifting that is not so easy.
No.
Because it's ingrained. I think just the awareness and naming it. And even to your partner to say, I have difficulty with this, but still I take it on. Already it's in the space. Already it's not unconscious anymore. It's consciousness. And it's named and it's acknowledged. And then the skill in the relationship then to develop is to validate that and to empathize, to say, knowing you and knowing your family and knowing the culture that you're from, the background, the religion that you grew up in, it makes sense that you tend to go that, do that, choose that, even though you know you end up feeling like that. It makes sense. What can I offer you that will help you with that?
This is the thing, asking, because everybody is, my needs are completely different to somebody else's. But it's have that person say, what would work for you? How can I help you in whatever situation you're in? Because it's not a one size fits all. Everybody's very different. And I think it's just that. I'm not really requiring, even when the boys were newborns, I wasn't requiring help, so much with the logistics of a baby. It was more for me. It was more the mental load, the responsibility, that was for, it wasn't the physical thing. My husband was lovely. He would sort of do things, feeding and things like that in the night, but I was breastfeeding. So it was a bit of I was okay with that. But it was more, but it's not also, it wasn't something that is fair because I expected him to entertain me mentally. Where, he's also exhausted. He would get back home or, even when he was sort of staying with me for a while before I went back to work, I'd expect him to sort of, the moment the baby's done, okay, so tell me what's happening in your world. I need something else that's not baby related. And he's probably also at a point where he wanted to come. So it was just that. What do you need from me? What do I need from you? That's going to, give us a bit of peace and harmony.
Definitely.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think then to be able to identify the smallest act.
Well, that's it.
The smallest act of compassion, the smallest act of kindness, the smallest act of entertainment, the smallest act of support, because we are stretched thin. We're overwhelmed, our resources are depleted. So what's the smallest that I can ask that will make a difference?
Absolutely. Even now, for me, that's like bedtime. When he does bedtime for the boys, I've got that half an hour, and it's not a big deal. It's 30 minutes, but it's lovely. I really appreciate it. He loves it. I enjoy it too. So it's that it doesn't have to be big things. It's small things. Don't give me a car with an empty petrol tank,
Feeling held in mind, I think. Being considered.
Okay. So taking it back. So let's say you've got a couple who've just had a baby. Well, not just had a baby. Let's say they're a year in, not brand new, but not completely seasoned parent. But it's not as bad as it was. Not that, newborns are bad or anything, but it's not sort of the waking every 2 hours. You've had a full day with the kids, then you've got maybe work and you've thrown in life and all sorts of things. The last thing on a couple's mind is date night. What would be a suggestion to have that closeness, to prioritize your adult relationship outside from your kids. I mean, date night was a huge thing before kids came along, and we are intentional, but there are times when we're either too tired, we've got stuff on, we've got sort of things on the next morning. What are ways that level of intimacy can be met when your life as it is so chaotic? Any suggestion for any parent? Because I think everyone's like, what do we do?
Let's go to bed and sleep.
Yeah. There is that temptation.
Yeah.
And, it's also this fear of, sometimes if we are tired, there's this fear of if we just want to just chill out and watch TV, is that damaging our relationship? Is this something we're not being intentional, but also at the same time, we've had a full work day, we've got the kids, and it's a little bit of downtime. I feel, again, speaking from my experience, we're always on this constant battle of, is our relationship strong enough? Should we be doing more? What would be tips for that, I guess, or like the ultimate one?
I think it should address two things: connection and pleasure. Whatever that is. Whatever those two specific individuals require to feel connected and require to experience pleasure. If the one says, tonight, I want us to watch Netflix, but hold me while we do so.
Yeah, cuddle.
Let's cuddle.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk. I don't have the capacity. I don't have the mental space for it. I want to zone out, but I want to feel you against me.
Yeah.
Is there something wrong with that?
No, that's lovely. Yeah.
The other one says, you know what, tonight, I just want you to join me in the bath. And let's just
have a conversation.
Have a glass of wine. Nothing serious. Or something. You know what? Let's get out of the house. Let's dress up again.
Yeah. Have a fun night out.
Have a fun night out. Get a babysitter.
Yeah.
It is, again, it's going to be individual. What do you need from me to feel connected to me? And what do you need from me to experience pleasure?
Do you know, it's as simple as, let's go for a drive.
Yeah.
I remember when Laith, my oldest, was born, our nanny was like, you know what? He's asleep. I've got him. I remember he was maybe about 2 weeks old. Nasser said, let's get in the car. I love the McDonald's, the Postmix Coke, and I was breastfeeding at the time. So I was like, let's do it. So we went to the drive-thru, had a conversation. We listened to music. We didn't even have a conversation.
Yeah.
Put a playlist on, did a drive, and I came back and I was quite worried first time round. Yeah. But it was just that. Yeah. It took maybe 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be extravagant.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not about what we do.
Yeah.
That's only a means to what end. The end is connection and pleasure. And again, when we draw that through to sexual intimacy after the birth of children, again, it has to come back to that. Because things are different.
Completely.
Everything changes. So again, it's a negotiation and a conversation about, what do you want from me to feel connected to me and to experience your body in a pleasurable way?
Yeah. Which also in itself is very difficult.
Yeah.
I feel like this is something that we could do an entire episode on.
Absolutely.
It's very difficult that whole, to have that level of intimacy after you've had children. It's a completely different ball game.
Yeah.
And a lot of people struggle with that.
And I think having conversations about it in and of itself is difficult, because I think there's a lot of fear of removing the romance and the excitement from it. But
that's a thing.
The reality is things have changed, and the things each person wants have changed. So it's really, the communication is so central.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to have compassion for each other.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
To know that it's normal that things are different now.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean something's wrong.
No, that's it.
It's normal. Things will change. Yeah. You started saying the inevitability it's inevitable that things will change. That's relationship.
Yeah.
So when you recognize and experience that, you can raise your hand and say, oh, this is normal.
That's the best, I think, take home. I mean, the fact that it's normal. The change is normal. It doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
Things will change in ways that you've never really thought about it changing. Traditionally, you don't really hear about, couples having a baby and have to schedule their conversations, their intimacy, you don't hear about them. No one tells you about them. And that shouldn't be looked at as, oh, that's not a good thing, or this is a red flag, or this is something that, we should really take a magnifying glass on. It's normal.
Absolutely. Let's not pathologize human behavior
This is it.
and normal life.
This is it. Because that's what it is. I mean, even again, for me, I always think to myself, oh, but is this going well?
Yeah.
Are we on the right track? But, no one, I don't know if anybody else is having this type of problem. And I think it's just because it's not discussed.
It's not discussed.
And I think that the question is, are we on the right track? The reality is there is no track. Where's the track?
We're in the
We have
woods
no idea where
trying
we're
to
just-
find our way.
Yeah.
We're just all figuring it out.
One of my last question is self-care. Again, another word I feel is a little bit of a double-edged sword. We place a lot of effort or a lot of emphasis on trying to establish and incorporate self-care in our daily lives. How would you advise parents sort of trying to establish their lives and their children and raising a family and take that individual self-care, for themselves and then sort of come together as a couple?
Yeah.
I mean, is that something that is advised?
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
always necessary. You remain an individual.
Yeah.
You're never going to be anyone else but yourself.
But I guess my question is, do you think that to be successful, or again, I'm not going to use that word, but to be content in your relationship, the idea of self-care should be central?
Yeah. I mean, I think self-care, to me personally, I think self-care is central to everything because what we're thinking about is the relationship to self, which is central to any other relationship. It's how you treat yourself. So I think sometimes because of the way things are advertised and stuff, people create self-care as like a separate thing.
Yes.
It's like, I go and get my nails done.
Yes.
And then I'm going to go get a massage. And that's like a thing outside of me. But the way I like to see it is that I'm thinking about the relationship to myself. How am I feeling right now? Can I be truly aware of like, I'm actually losing my temper more frequently. I'm feeling burnt out. And self-care might be just watching some Netflix for 10 minutes or half an hour while your husband puts the kids to sleep. But it's so personal, and it can be one day self-care to you looks different than the next day.
Yeah.
But it's a constant, it's like there's a thermostat inside of you saying, oh, it's getting too hot in here.
Yes.
Just take a breather. And whatever
Yeah.
taking a breather looks like, how do you lower the temperature? It's so personal, but it is so central to operating as a human, but in relation to anyone else.
Do you think that self-care, and I say that in air marks, do you think that self-care can be done together?
Then it's relationship. Then it's we care, not me care.
Yeah.
The reality is we are neither fully independent individuals, neither are we fully dependent partners. We are always Juan, is partly an individual and partly one of a system. Because we are not designed to function by ourselves as individuals. We are designed to coexist.
Yes.
So there's a me part, there's a we part, and I'm part of all of that. I'm a we. So self-care happens when I do what charges me by myself, for myself. When we do it together, we are serving the we, but the me will benefit from it.
Yeah.
But then it's essentially about the we part.
More than, than me.
And if I do not practice self-care, which is just being conscious of how I relate to myself, how will I be able to express what I need?
I think that's it. I think self-care in itself, it's, you're not scheduling time for a massage. It's to know exactly what you need and how to communicate that. To be able to sit with yourself for a minute and think, I need to explain to my partner that this is really going to help me or benefit me in the day-to-day.
Yeah. Take that example of massage. If that is part of your self-care routine, well, it's an indication that you need touch.
Yeah.
You need loving touch.
Absolutely.
So now you go, this really makes me feel good. Now I can go to my partner and say, you know what? I would like to request more affectionate touch from you.
Absolutely.
Because I realize that makes me feel love. If one of my hobbies or self-care activities is either playing guitar or doing art, drawing or painting. Becoming aware of, my need for creativity, creative expression, novelty, conceptualizing stuff. So now I can go to my partner and tell my wife, can we please go and attend this exhibition or go have an immersive experience? Because I'm aware when I do this for myself, it feeds my soul.
Yeah.
So then when we do it together, I know it will make me feel more connected.
That's actually so insightful. I'm just trying to think. I do like to obviously have conversations with people. And I do tend to just love when we are across the table talking to one another.
Yeah.
That is a time where I'm quite content and happy. Yeah. It's an epiphany right here as we record.
A live epiphany.
Yeah. Guys, I always end the episode. Well, we start an episode with a quote, and I like to end it with one, but not from me, from you guys. Have you got one for us today?
So the one I have chosen to talk about today is, again, related to consciousness, because I think it's so central to how we are. And it's from Carl Jung. He says, there is no consciousness, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. And I think it's so central to knowing that in a relationship, because I think in a relationship, as you said earlier, Raya, with a baby, with a partner, any intimate relationship, we get so confronted with things about ourselves, the feelings we didn't know were there, the history that's in there. And the confrontation is painful, but in becoming conscious of it, we're setting ourselves free from it. So there is pain in the process of becoming a parent and becoming parents together. But at the same time, we're setting ourselves free from that pain and the baggage.
Brilliant.
Beautiful.
It's really very, very beautiful and so fitting. Thank you. Juan.
I was thinking of a quote by Plato,
Okay.
which says, be kind. Be kind to everyone, for everyone is fighting a hard battle.
Absolutely.
And in that time of transition from a couple to parents within a larger family system, it's difficult. So be kind.
Yeah.
For both of us are fighting a hard battle here.
Yeah.
It couldn't be more fitting. And I'm so grateful for both of you for coming here and talking at length about, areas that aren't typically and traditionally talked about. To be honest and realistic about relationships and what relations look like after family and life. And we're not talking about, the first few years when you're fueled with all sorts of hormones. It's when the hormones are leveled off and you've got the responsibility and you're building as opposed to, running, like teenagers. And it's important to know, you come together as a family unit, and it requires work. And the work is normal for everybody.
100%.
So I really appreciate your time, your efforts, and everything that you guys are doing for the community. I'm really, really grateful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
for having us.
And thank you for having these conversations so openly with people in the community.
I hope so. I hope,
so.
I mean, to be honest, I know that my listeners are going to love it because it is truthful and there's no fluff. And that's the whole point. I don't think people want to hear what the ideal is.
Yeah.
You want to hear what the truth is, really, essentially. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for listening to They Say It Takes a Village. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I look forward to bringing you another one next week. Don't forget, please subscribe, rate, and review so I can reach and help even more parents. And if you've got a topic that you'd like me to cover, please head over to my Instagram page, ittakesavillage.me, and drop me a line.